Mercy Me is coming to Pittsburgh, the Together Again tour with Mercy Me, Crowder, and special guest Andrew Ripp, Thursday, October 5th. Bring your family and friends to the PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh for Mercy Me, Crowder, and Andrew Ripp live in concert. 3 multiple award-winning artists on one stage for one night. Let your spirit soar, your heart sing, and your faith ignite. Mark your calendars for Thursday, October 5th. Get your tickets now at mercyme.org.
I get a lot of pushback on social media about the Enneagram. It's of the devil.
I'm grateful that Christians are mindful and using discernment to apply the scriptures.
You're so nice, Jeff. You're such a 9. I'm like, y'all are wrong. And
he's a 6. He's a 6. I'm the 9.
So,
everyone, and welcome to the Christy Wright Show, where faith meets personal development so you can have a bigger faith and a better life. I'm so excited because today we are talking about the Enneagram. Now, if you are familiar with the Enneagram, you're going to be excited about this. If you're not familiar with the Enneagram, you're going to learn what it is, which will be great because now you can have conversations with your friends and actually know what they're talking about for once. And then I get to sit down with my good friends, Beth and Jeff McCord, who are Enneagram coaches, best-selling authors, and they are experts on the Enneagram. And what you'll love about them is they teach the Enneagram through a faith perspective, which you know we're all about here on this show. But first, let's talk about what the Enneagram is. Now, I want to give you an example from a different area of my life. So years ago, this was back in my early 20s, I drove this 1996 Jeep Grand Cherokee. And y'all, I drove this car until it died its last death and would not come back to life. But in between that day when it was done and years before when it started having problems, I prayed this car back to life all the time. Like it smelled like a go-kart, it leaked oil, and it was like barely hanging on for the longest time. Well, when it finally was done, I literally drove it into the ground and it was time to get something new. I got a newer, at the time, still used, but newer car, and it was a 2005 Jeep Grand Cherokee. I loved Jeeps at the time, and so I got this new car. Well, when I was driving it home, I remember it started raining. And y'all, it started raining, and without me touching anything, the windshield wiper started going. They're going back. I was like, oh, how did it know? This is the smartest car I've ever seen. And then I turned on my blinker to try to get over, and it starts beeping at me because a car was coming. It knew there was a car in my blind spot. I was amazed at how smart and intelligent this car was. But the truth is that car, this newer, nicer car with all these features and functionality and blind spot sensor and that type of thing, showed me things that I did not know were there. The blind spot sensor, for example, I didn't know there was a car coming up in my blind spot. I hadn't even had a chance to look in the rearview mirror yet and check. The truth is, we all have things that we're not aware of. We have blind spots. We have things going on in our lives, in our personality, in our communication, in our motivations, in our behaviors that we are not aware of. Now, if you are a little bit of a control freak, like I know many people are, then this should be alarming to you. I don't want there to be things going on in me that I'm not aware of. I don't want to come across to people in ways that I'm not aware of. I don't want to have blind spots that I'm not aware of. And so what is so fascinating about the Enneagram is it shows you these blind spots. It shows you things about yourself that you are not currently aware of. And it shows you things about other people that you're not aware of. It is like shining a light in a dark space for you where it is going to open up so much more awareness about you, why you think the way that you do, why you act the way that you do, why you react the way that you do, and it will show you that about other people as well. So I want to spend just a few minutes teaching you in an overview what the Enneagram is and why it can help you in every area of your life. The Enneagram is different than other personality tests because most personality tests focus on what you do. Here are your strengths. Here's how you work. Here are the environments that you work best in. Here's the leadership you respond best to. Here are the tasks that are in line with what makes you tick. And here are the tasks that you can perform best. It's very external focused. Most personality tests are focused on your behavior. But if we just focus on the surface, then we miss the more important question, which is why? Why do you do what you do? Why do you think that way? Why do you react that way? Why do you get your feelings hurt about that thing? What drives you to do that thing in that way? The motivation behind the behavior that brings so much more understanding to the surface level behavior. Well, that's what makes the Enneagram so unique and so special. It focuses on the why you do what you do. It focuses on the internal motivations for everything that you're doing and saying and experiencing externally. And so the Enneagram is broken down into 9 numbers. 1 through 9, there are 9 personality types. These are 9 unique perspectives on the world of how you think, act, behave, your motivations, your fears, everything that makes you tick from the inside out. And I'll tell you, my experience with the Enneagram is much like yours, I'm sure, for those of you guys that have been introduced to it or heard about it. People kept talking about it. Specifically, my good friend Rachel Cruz, who you guys know, Dave Ramsey's daughter, she kept talking about it. This was years ago. And I would hear people talk about it all the time. They're like, oh, well, he's a 4-wing 5, so well, he's a 9-wing 8, so he did that because, he's a 7. And I'm like, no, I don't know. What are you saying? What are you talking about? And I found that as they talked about this, I became so curious. Finally, I wanted to read about it. Finally, I wanted to learn this foreign language. And y'all, when I started to dig in, when I started to do a little bit of research and reading and understanding, my eyes were open and I was absolutely fascinated at how different this personality typing system was from all the others that I have taken through the years, which I love those as well, but this is different. There was one specific moment that I will never forget though. So I was reading The Road Back to You by Ian Cron, and I was getting my nails done. This was a weekend years ago, and I was reading the chapter on 8s. Now, I had taken the personality test online, one of the free assessments, and I got several reports. One that I was a 7, which is kind of like the fun-loving, spontaneous personality, which I definitely connect with. And the other result I got was that I was a 3, which is very performer, achiever, driver, goal-getter, just love to achieve and go for new goals. And I identify with that as well. Well, because I didn't know much about the Enneagram, I didn't know which one I related to more. I didn't really understand the differences. I was still getting introduced to it. But I remember sitting there at the nail salon getting my nails done, and I flipped the page and I'm reading the chapter on the number 8. Now, I didn't get any results that I was an 8, so I didn't know that I was or wasn't or whatever. The test was very brief that I took online, and it was a very short summary. So I'm reading the book and I'm reading the chapter, and there was one specific section in a paragraph on the number 8. And it says, one distinct feature of 8s is that many of them had a wound from their childhood that taught them that they can't trust people, that taught them that they had to do everything themselves. If they're going to make it in the world, they're going to have to do it themselves. And y'all, for some reason, I still can't explain, and I feel my eyes burning even now, tears started streaming down my face. I felt so seen. I felt so understood. And to be honest, I felt a little exposed. Like, oh, maybe that's why I do what I do. Maybe that's why I'm so hard-charging, go-getting, gonna do it myself. Y'all, my motto in high school was carry cash, always drive, and don't trust anyone. Thankfully, the Lord has done some work in my life, and he softened me a bit since I was 17, thankfully, believe it or not. But I was hard. I was hard and untrusting, and I was determined to make my way in the world. And still to this day, my worst fear is being controlled. My worst fear is being helpless. My worst fear is someone saying, you have to do this or else. And I was like, well, I choose or else, because you're not the boss of me. You might look at that and think, oh, what a leader she is. She's so confident. No, all I'm doing is showing you my wound. I learned early on that if I was going to make it in the world, I was going to have to do it myself. That moment for me not only made me realize that I identify most with the number 8 challenger personality type, But it helped me realize that there are deeper motivations in me that drive me to do what I do and think like I think that I did not realize were there. I did not realize how these internal motivations shaped my personality, my behavior, my thoughts, how I act, how I react. I read multiple different lines in this chapter on the number 8, for example, that I thought, well, that is exactly right. One of the things it said in the book is 8s feel so misunderstood. I said, yes, I'm not angry, I'm passionate. I'm not bossy, I'm helpful. What do you mean I'm bossy and angry? No, I'm passionate and helpful. 8s feel so misunderstood. Another sentence I read in there that I thought just nailed it. And I said, yes, it says, one of the things you need to know about 8s is they don't have to be in control, but they will not be controlled. I was like, exactly. I don't have to be in charge, but don't you tell me what to do, because I will do the opposite to show you you're not the boss of me. I felt so seen. And what was so fascinating in reading this chapter on this number that I really related to is I felt like I was meeting myself in a new way. I was meeting a part of me that I had never met before. I was learning a part of me that I didn't know was there before. This was a tool to help me understand myself, to help me maybe change my approach when I come bulldozing into a meeting feeling so passionate, thinking, I don't know, let's rein it in. Everyone doesn't experience you like you think they do. They're perceiving you as angry and aggressive. Maybe you could just tone it down a bit. Smile some more. Ask people how they're doing before you tell them what you want to do. When you begin to learn your blind spots, when you begin to understand why you do what you do, you can grow and mature, and you can actually improve your weaknesses and maximize your strengths. I don't know what number you might identify with more than others. Everybody has different ones, and everyone is valid. I will tell you that reading and learning the Enneagram has helped me not only understand myself, it has unbelievably helped me understand others. Understanding my husband, who's a 5. Before I learned the Enneagram, I thought my husband just was not super excited or emotional about me. There was something about me that wasn't enough, that didn't evoke emotion from him. And then I just realized his personality is less expressive. That's okay. He shows love in different ways. I learned about my mom, who's the helper. She loves to feel needed. And so how can I affirm her and not make her feel like her only worth comes from how she can help? It helped me understand other people's personality styles, to slow down for some people that like to go slower, where talking fast, walking fast, being loud is too much, too overwhelming. Maybe to speed up for people that like to talk fast and walk fast. And to be able to serve and lead and show up, and most of all, connect with others that are different from you. It's a tool. That's all it is. It's a tool to help you understand yourself and to understand others. And I think, regardless of what you think about the Enneagram, that's a pretty cool thing as we learn to walk together and become more like Jesus here on this earth. All right, y'all, I'm so excited because I get to hang out with my good friends, Beth and Jeff McCord. You guys are Enneagram coaches, you're authors, you're speakers, you've been a pastor for 2 decades. And this is something that has been really cool, even talking to you before we started recording. Y'all are doing a lot with the Enneagram.
We're doing a lot.
To be honest, more than I even realized. Mm-hmm. And I've talked about the Enneagram on the show before. Yeah. And y'all actually have, is it a quiz where it's called Ennea What?
Yeah, so enneawhat.com is a great place for people to start. So for instance, if you were to talk to people about the Enneagram and they're like, Ennea what?
That's what they're thinking now.
That's what they're thinking.
Even as I introduced you, like, here she goes again. What is the Enneagram? That's why I wanted to start here.
Right.
Even dive into our conversation, because if you guys are listening or watching and you're going, Ennea what?
Yeah.
You have a resource to help them understand what this is.
For everyone that is like, Ennea what? So go to enneawhat.com and we'll have 4 videos that kind of on-ramp people into understanding what the Enneagram is, and then also to start to help them find their main type. But we do have a free assessment at yourenneagramcoach.com, but Ennea What is a great place for anyone to start out.
But let's start with just what it is for those people that are wondering.
So the Enneagram is really showing that there's 9 valid perspectives of the world.
Okay.
We all see the world differently. It's like as if we had different lenses on. And you're an 8, I'm a 9, he's a 6. And sitting here, we think, oh, we're interacting normal. Like we're all thinking the same thing or seeing life the same way, but we don't.
Right.
And that can really get under our skin when people do things differently.
Yes.
but there are 9 valid ways of seeing, interpreting, and reacting to the world. So the Enneagram is showing you why you think, feel, and behave in particular ways. And it's all based off of your core motivations. So there's 4 core motivations that we teach at your Enneagram coach. There's a core fear that you're always trying to prevent or run away from. You have a core desire, like, oh, if I could just get this thing, life will be perfect. You have a core weakness. Other teachers call it the passion or the deadly sin. We call it the core weakness because we are weak, but Christ is strong, and his grace is sufficient for us. But this core weakness is like our Achilles heel, thorn in our side that keeps tripping us up over and over. But we want to use that to get our eyes fixated back on Christ. Then we have a core longing. This is the message our heart longs to hear, and we're trying to get it with things on earth, whether it's relationships, careers, you name it. But Christ is the only one and that satisfies it, and he already has. And so when we keep coming back to him and realizing we are satisfied through him and that core longing, it changes everything. It changes ourselves personally. It changes our relationships. It changes our careers. And that is what we're trying to do at your Enneagram coach.
Let's do a quick overview of the 9 types and just say like what the number is, and then maybe what's the core motivation or the core fear, something to designate where we can identify, okay, that's significant to that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the type 1s are the principled reformers. And they fear being bad, evil, corruptible, and wrong. They desire to be good, balanced, ethical, moral, and right.
Correctness, accuracy.
Ethics, morals, procedures. And they have a loud inner critic that is constantly berating them on what needs to be fixed.
Yes.
Now, the type 2 is the nurturing supporter, and they fear being unloved, rejected, worthless, not needed. They desire to be loved, wanted, and appreciated. So for them, they feel all the feels of people and see the needs, and they want to insert themselves with confidence that they're going to help someone.
They need to be needed.
Yes, they need to be needed. Now, the type 3 is the admirable achiever, and they fear being a failure, inefficient, exposed, and they desire to be admired, high status, high regard, successful. But for them, they kind of really struggle with deceit. Now, this is deceiving themselves into believing they're only the image they present to others. So they always have to achieve. Now, the type 4 is the introspective individualist, and they fear being emotionally cut off, plain, mundane, defective, flawed.
They want to be original.
They want to be original, their most authentic self. But for them, they struggle with envy. They think that others possess qualities that they lack, that there's something missing, something flawed, and that others just can't understand them. Now, the type 5 is the analytical investigator. I mean, you might know this. They fear being incapable, incompetent, ignorant, and definitely their internal resources depleted to feeling almost like a catastrophic depletion. Now, they desire to be knowledgeable and capable, having all the resources, but also holding on to their energy reserves. And so for them, they're going to really kind of struggle with kind of hoarding their own resources, a lot of isolation and privacy to really think through their thoughts and feelings alone. So they need a lot of alone time. But think of it more as like a cell phone battery. If it goes down really fast, you're going to protect that. And that's kind of what it's like for the type 5. Now, the type 6 is the faithful guardian. They fear being without support, guidance, and security, blamed and targeted. And that's really what they're desiring, is to be supported, to be guided, because they struggle with anxiety. And anxiety is where they have an inner committee. So the type 1 has that one loud inner critic. The 6 has an inner committee, and it's chiming in from all different perspectives. So they kind of get a lot of self-doubt and, well, which way should I go? So if they can get advice from someone they trust on the outside, it could be a belief system, a person, then it's like, okay, now I feel more secure in going in that direction. And then the type 7 is our enthusiast optimist, and they fear being trapped in emotional pain, limited, bored, and missing out on something fun.
FOMO.
the true FOMOs. They desire to be happy, satisfied, and fully content. But they struggle with the core weakness of gluttony. Now, it's not just about food.
Never enough.
Though food is a part of it. It's, I want to fill up this insatiable desire inside me to fill it up with stimulation and excitement. But it's almost like there's holes at the bottom and it just keeps seeping out. And they're like, oh, I'm going to go to the next fun thing, the next fun thing. The type 8s are the passionate protectors. And for the 8s, they fear being harmed, controlled, limited, and left at the mercy of injustice. And they desire to protect themselves and those in their closest inner circle. But they struggle with excess. What they see, they want, and they go get it. And it can, like you said, be a bulldozer, but we call it a snowplow. So we want the 8s to be a snowplow where they're plowing a path for others and getting them.
That's a great visual. That's so much more positive.
It is. I mean, think about up in the north, like a highway. You get a Ford truck out there, It's just not going to do it. You need those big diesel snowplows. But we need everyone behind you, not nicking them on the side of the road or plowing over. So that's the healthy to the unhealthy. Now, the last but not least is my type, the peaceful accommodator. We fear conflict of any kind, tension, losing relationship. We desire peace and inner stability. But we struggle with just going along to get along to make that peace happen, but we lose ourselves in the process. So that's where sloth, it's not a physical laziness, it's a laziness of knowing ourselves and what we want.
I love that. Now, I want to circle back to the faith aspect in a minute, but I love how you defined it as perspectives. You went into detail there of thinking, feeling, behaving, that type of thing, but the perspective is so interesting to me. Talk a little bit about how this can influence not only our level of self-awareness, which is so important. Many people know there's so much research that backs up the correlation between self-awareness and success. This is a huge attribute in every area of our life, but also in our marriage. And so this is a tool that helps you have more self-awareness and improve your marriage. Talk a little bit about, you guys have a book, Becoming Us, on marriage and the Enneagram. So talk a little bit about.
It can be used for any relationship. We did really focus on marriage, but any relationship, parent, child, coworker could really use that book. The back of the book has like these cheat sheets on how to understand, ourselves and each other. So it's really helpful. But we want to realize that we see the world differently. And when we can just take off our lens for a second and put on another person's, that empathy, that compassion can pour out in ways we never thought possible. And with the Enneagram, we want to realize that a lot of people don't like the Enneagram in the sense because they're like, oh, it just talks about my negative stuff. Well, the Enneagram is a non-judgmental friend. It is literally going to show you from your best attributes and how we reflect God, all to the way when we don't. But that is where the power is, because God looks at our heart, right? Not just the outward manifestations of what we do, but our heart motivation. So here's a tool that gives clarity of where our heart condition is. Are we aligned, misaligned, or out of alignment with the truth of the gospel? And now, when we're in Christ, we're in Christ. But there are times where we keep veering off and falling in the same kind of pitfall, getting stuck all the time. And we get so frustrated, like, why is this happening? The Enneagram is going to clearly describe why that's happening, but not just leave you there, to help you to get out of that pit and get back on your best path, which is becoming more like Christ each and every day. So you can imagine, oh my gosh, I have a tool that brings that kind of clarity. You have to work alongside with the Holy Spirit to get back on that best path. But to have a tool that's that clear, it's really amazing.
Well, and let me say this about marriage, too. Marriage researcher John Gottman, he's the guy, he wrote 7 Principles for Making Marriage Last. In his research, he discovered that 70% of all marital arguments do not have a right or wrong answer.
Wow. People would disagree with that. I for sure was the right one.
We do joke.
70% of the time.
8s and 1s are always right. So the rest of us were not. But it comes down to personality and preference. Yeah. So there's a reason why we as couples, and if you've been married longer than a honeymoon, you know there's a pattern to the arguments. And even before you have the argument, you almost know how it's going to transpire 100%. And where it's going to end.
We would even joke how our dog, we think, is a type 9, the peaceful mediator. She could feel the energy in the room starting like, oh, they're about ready to dance.
She's like, I know how this is going to go down.
She's like, I'm out. And she would hit the door like, let me out, because she could feel that tension. But it's true. You kind of know, oh, we're going to get into that dance. And the Enneagram can be so powerful in kind of naming and understanding what that dynamic is. And not to just go, oh, well, that's just how we are. It's to go, okay, well, how did I see that? How did they see that? How can I come at it from a different angle that supports them? I get clarity, they get clarity, and I can move in a direction more in love and growth than selfish intent.
It's so interesting that you say that too, Jeff, because I had a conversation with Matt, and this was probably several months ago. We were talking about something that we disagreed on, and we do see the world very differently. That's so right. Our conversation, even though they are 99% of the time totally loving and respectful, are like, how are we having the same conversation again? Like, I feel like we've had this same conversation for 10 years. And you're going, there's an element of it that we will always continue to see the world differently. And so it's always going to be struggle. But this gives you a tool, like you're saying, Beth, to have a conversation from of like, oh, okay, here's where you're coming from. And what I love is the lens that you guys put on this consistently is the Bible, consistently is faith. So I get a lot of pushback on social media about the Enneagram.
Sure.
I get, not a lot, that's an exaggeration. I also like to exaggerate. I do get some, though, of direct messages and emails of it's of the devil, you can't be a Christ follower and use the Enneagram, and lots of skepticism around the Enneagram from the faith community.
That's right.
So instead of avoiding that, welcome, we're just going to talk about it. Teach me about, because I've never even been able to really defend it or speak intelligently because I don't know enough about the history of it, but you guys do. So would you teach me and us a little bit about the history and how you're able to blend this tool with your faith and use both?
Yeah, I want to honor the question. I'm grateful that Christians are mindful and testing the spirits or using discernment to apply the scriptures so that we're not necessarily influenced by the next popular trend.
Oh, you're so nice, Jeff. You're such a 9. I'm like, y'all are wrong, and here's why.
He's a 6. I'm the 9.
So,
sorry. Either way, you're both the nice ones. Nice ones go on the couch, and then there's me. I'm like, well, y'all are wrong, and here's why. Okay,
so the intent behind it is great. I think what many people assume, so it is true, the modern form of the Enneagram was highly influenced by 2 Eastern mystics.
Okay.
And they had different types of spiritual experiences, and they used New Age or Eastern mystic language to describe those experiences.
Okay.
But here's what's different. And I think a lot of people think of the Enneagram sort of like the Mormon Church or Joseph Smith, who goes away, he has a conversation with the angel Moroni, he's delivered an authoritative text, and they create a religion out of it. That wasn't how the Enneagram started. It was more, one guy had a container of knowledge, which he would not even recognize how the Enneagram is used now. One of his students then started teaching it to his students in California.
Now, what year are we talking about here at this point?
60s and 70s.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the students then took his teaching on the Enneagram and started teaching it from their worldviews. So even early on in Southern California, there were Jesuits who were taking this insight to the Enneagram from an Eastern mystic, but also a trained clinical psychologist, and teaching it within the framework of Catholicism. So this is not an authoritative thing. This is more like a university professor working with a theory whose students then take it further.
Okay.
Now, for us, the church has related to these things differently throughout history. And we know this to be true because there are some that want to retreat from culture and not engage with it at all, and there are some that blend with culture that they're no longer Christian.
Yep.
What we're saying is that the Bible has used tools. Let's just say the Hittite suzerain treaty. When God makes a covenant with his people, he used a common business tool that was used during that time to exemplify his relationship to Abraham. Well, we're just using the tool, but we're not buying into the worldview.
Yes.
And as we're starting to realize through research that's been done by Biola and Indiana Wesleyan, that this actually has scientific data behind it. It's not just a personality trend, and nor is it some kind of a occult practice that shouldn't be used by Christians.
Well, to kind of piggyback on that, for us at Your Enneagram Coach, our mission statement says that we're here to bring astonishing clarity so that people can break free from self-condemnation, fear, and shame by knowing and experiencing the unconditional love, forgiveness, and freedom in Christ. So that mission statement that we have doesn't even have the word Enneagram in it. And obviously, we think the Enneagram's a pretty great tool. But our focus needs to always be Christ and becoming more like him. And so we implore to everyone, whether it's our free assessment, all the way to our courses, our books, and then even becoming a certified Enneagram coach, all of it is under that umbrella.
So all the things that we're talking about can be found at yourenneagramcoach.com/origins. We spent 3 podcasts talking about the history of the Enneagram, talking about the worldview of the Enneagram and how it aligns and misaligns with a biblical worldview, and then how Christians should use it. Because that's the other thing too, is that we all have those experiences of being stereotyped or people giving more authority to their Enneagram type than what Christ has actually done for them as believers. And all of that's being answered. yourenneagramcoach.com/origins.
/origins. That's really helpful, especially for people that they want to know more, but they have those hesitations. And so, so I love that you guys have that resource. For people that they know their number, here's one of the trends I've seen, okay? So I'm an 8, and when I've talked about that, I will often get messages from people go, I'm an 8 too, high five, I'm an 8 too, like pound it, like, oh yay, like, and it's like this celebration, which I love the connection. Like I do love that. But I do think there's an element of sometimes we can almost use it as either a source of pride or a source of a cop-out. Like, well, I'm an 8, so I just get mad, so
Yeah, you've nailed it. I mean,
deal with it. And so how do we deal with that? Because what I say when people are like, so proud of being an 8, I'm like almost like it tends to have this undercurrent message that 8s are leaders or something. I said, listen, let me tell you, when I say that I'm an 8, I'm showing you my deepest wound.
Absolutely.
That's right.
I'm showing you my deepest wound from childhood that taught me that I've got to do it myself. And that is not something to be proud of.
I was just doing a team presentation. They were doing strategic planning, and the owner of the business is an 8. And all around the table, they kept calling him your 8-ness instead of your highness, your 8-ness. Well, what that did, though, was it encouraged something about him that he didn't necessarily want.
That's right.
And yet it was also affirming something about who he is as a leader, that he really has significant influence over them. But why don't you tell them about how we address those two dynamics?
Yeah, so we really say don't use it as a sword or a shield. Don't use it as a sword where you're, harming others, belittling, mocking. It could be sarcastic, outright mean about it.
And that's one of the reasons why particularly husbands don't engage with the Enneagram, because they're afraid that it's going to be used to stereotype and criticize them. So if I know who you are and your motivations, now I have a tool in order to try to change you to be who I want you to be.
Interesting.
So we really want to be loving and caring towards one another. And it's hard because you do have this very, clear tool of what's going on. So you don't want to use it as a sword. And it's not just to another person, it's to ourselves too, right?
Absolutely.
So the self-condemnation and the shame, we don't want to use it. Like Christ has freed us. At the same time, we don't want to use it as a shield. Like, well, I'm a 9, guys. Sometimes I procrastinate. You're just going to have to deal with it.
Right. I move slow. Deal with it.
I'm gonna go take a nap. You just got to figure it out. Like, I mean, that is not helpful in relationships. And the Bible goes completely against that because it's calling us to transform, to be more like Christ. It's not to just go, oh, well, I have weaknesses. No, God created each personality type to reflect him, to represent him. So as a 9, there's so many wonderful things that I can offer the world. I see all 9 perspectives. I can bring people into harmony. But I also hate conflict. So a lot of times I want to avoid doing that because it's like, well, what if I upset someone? But that means I don't show up. So I need to recognize, okay, what are my weaknesses that hinder me from loving others well, which sometimes is entering conflict, but also how can I? And that all comes into understanding our weaknesses and frailties, but also our strengths. Because a lot of times what happens is people look at the Enneagram, like I said, and they're like, oh man, it's so harsh. It's because usually as humans, we kind of look at the less glittery aspects of our personality type and we're like, oh, I'm a terrible type. And it's like, no, God created you to represent a part of Christ. And it's beautiful. And so now we want to use that tool to expound on it and to grow in it, but also to be honest with really where we have our weaknesses and to just be there in it.
Yeah. What do you think is the most misunderstood part of the Enneagram?
They focus on behaviors.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yes.
The Enneagram is speaking to motivation. So one of the ways
why
that
we do what we do.
Why we do what we do. Because some would say, like, for instance, I thought I was an 8 for 5 years and perpetuated that, almost trained people how to relate to me as an 8. And then I was sitting down with a therapist and we were doing some life story work. And he goes, Jeff, do you think you're a 6? I was so angry because Beth's mom's a 6 and she's so afraid of everything. Like, there's no way I'm a 6. Well, as we talked through it, I set aside the Enneagram for a year because I was so upset because I didn't want to be a 6. Well, think of Sherwin-Williams. When you go to Sherwin-Williams and you look for the color blue, you get 1,000 blues.
Yeah.
So oftentimes people will misunderstand the Enneagram by focusing on behaviors. Well, I don't do what that person does, so I can't be the same number, versus understanding the why behind why you think, feel, or behave.
Which is why we focus so much on the core motivation. So
yeah, and I love that too, because even your example of the blue at Sherwin-Williams, I think that all of this being a lens that you can view the world from, help you understand your world, yourself and others, and knowing it's not a box that you put yourself in. You're still uniquely created in Christ. That it's like, this is like, well, I identify most with an 8 or you with a 6 or you with a 9 or whatever, but this is something that it informs
Right.
how you live your life, it does not drive or determine or dictate or excuse how you live your life.
Because we all have different stories. We grew up with different families and backgrounds. Some people had really positive upbringings and some people didn't. And that all shapes us. God gave us different talents and resources and passions. So even though, because we were even talking about your husband being a 5 and Rachel's husband being a 5, they're very different.
Right.
Now, yes, the core motivations ultimately are going to be the same.
Yeah.
But everything else after that is unique to them. Yeah. And so we want to honor how God created us uniquely and to live that out.
Yeah. With the number, so there's 9 personality types, there's 9 perspectives, as you said, Beth. There can be a couple you identify with. It doesn't. You may have one main one, but like even the 3, I really resonate with the 3. Yeah. My worst fear is being controlled. So that's the 8 in me. That's the childhood wound, something that taught me I have to make my way in life and I can't trust others. But the 3 part of me, like the thought that people would think I'm not hardworking is like a deep fear. Like it is a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. Like I want to make sure. So I've heard friends talk about this before when they've taken the test. They're like, well, I don't know because I really connect with, and that's okay. We all have all.
We use all 9 types to varying degrees. So 3 might resonate a lot within you, whereas maybe another type 8, it's a little bit less. And there's a lot of understanding and nuancing. So as we train coaches and certify them, we go through all of that. Yeah. But for the people that are just kind of new at the Enneagram, it's okay that you might resonate with 2 types or 3 types and you're confused and pulled. Yeah. That doesn't mean that one you have to get rid of. Right. It's still a part of you, and we want to honor that part. Right. But what we're trying to do is find the one that is your main type because that will inform a lot of different things. Yeah. And so that's where finding your main type is so important. But yes, don't just throw off all the other types because that 3 is saying a lot. It's helped you a lot, but it also has hindered you a lot. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we want to recognize that and get to know that part of you so that you can go, okay, well, how can I use my 3 in a healthy way? Yeah. But where does it also trip me up? Yeah. And when can I recognize that? Or can I have accountability when it pops up? So it's not just focusing on just your main type, but that's the good starting point. Yeah. There's a lot of other layers to go through. So yes, I think that's a great way to do it.
Well, that is so helpful. And you guys actually have journals on each of the 9 numbers. So if someone wants to know more, how can they find it's almost like a quick read, a short book where you dive into each number. I got to write about the forward on the one on the 8.
Yes, exactly.
I was like, we're so misunderstood.
And it's true. And I really actually, in our presentations, I do I really focus in on the 8s because I feel like not only are 8s misunderstood, but 8 women.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could go on that forever.
We could do another episode on that.
But yes, the journals are called the Enneagram Collection, and it's a 21-day gift book journal. And I walk you through, I just basically break down the personality types so that you can learn about each of the aspects in each day. Yeah. And then there's questions to journal on. Yeah. So it's super easy. And then the cool part is that if you want to do it with a friend, a small group, each of the days are the same topic. And so you guys can get together later on and go, okay, so what did you learn about yourself? What did I learn about myself? And so it's a great way to do it with others.
That's fascinating. Well, you guys have so many great resources. I love how even before we started recording, you were talking about you take people from the Ennea what, where they don't even know what this is, the way to being a certified Enneagram coach. Yes. And your work is just incredible. And Beth, you were telling me a fun story that you actually started this business from Business Boutique in 2016, which is just like, I didn't even know that. It's so full circle.
I told you I was in the nosebleed. Yeah. And I'm watching and learning and growing. I remember specifically who the teachers were you had and the things that I had learned. So Business Boutique was huge. It really showed as women, we can do this. Yeah. Yes, there's intentionality, there's things that you have to learn, but take a step forward. And as a 9 who can struggle with sloth, it's like, okay, this is my calling.
Here's your action plan.
Let's go.
Yeah. I love it.
Super helpful.
That was fun. That was fun to hear because sometimes it's like if I didn't know that, it's like, oh, I just thought you guys, and it's like, oh, we were connected before I even we even realized
and it really is significant for 9. I mean, for viewers and listeners to understand, for Beth, for years we sat on this. She was the expert. I was the pastor. She played the pastor-wife role. But now you're Enneagram coach. Like we reach close to 5 million people every month.
Amazing.
We have coaches, over 1,600 coaches in 20 different countries. We've had over 2 million people take the assessment. I mean, in that one moment, that has grown into this beautiful tree where so many people are thriving now through their understanding of the Enneagram and being able to teach it to others.
Well, it's a testimony to the need out there that this is such a felt need for people to understand themselves and understand others. And it's such a testimony to your hard work. So well done, you guys, on building this thing.
Well, thank you for all the work that you've done, because then it has this ripple effect.
Yes, I love that. Well, I love helping women, especially through Business Boutique, you have no idea the ripple effect of what you're going to do. Yeah. And so I'm such a recipient of your teaching and vice versa. So thank you guys for being here. Thanks for teaching us, and tell everybody where they can connect with you guys to learn more.
Yeah, so anyone that's new, Enneawhat.com. Otherwise, your Enneagram coach has all the resources they need, from courses from beginning all the way to becoming a certified Enneagram coach.
Awesome. You guys are amazing. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right, y'all, I'm going to answer some of your questions that you sent in on social media. So let's see what we've got today. How to rest as a business owner with hustle mentality preached as the way to success. Ooh, this is good. This is good. This is deep. Let me just give you some tips. There's not like a perfect formula. And I will say in full transparency, I struggle with this so much. It is so hard for me to rest when the work is not done. So here's what I would do. 2 things that will help you rest in light of what you're saying. Maybe you have the drive to hustle all the time and you struggle to rest on your own. But then, as you said, the hustle mentality preached as the way to success. That influence can be powerful. That peer pressure all around you, it can be inspiring, but sometimes like it can be overwhelming where you're like, I just need a nap. I don't need to hustle more. I need to sleep. I actually did a recent podcast episode on this of when to hustle and when to slow down with Jennifer Allwood. So you can check that out if you want to. That's a great resource as well. But let me give you 2 specific things that might help you as just very simple tips. Number 1, set a goal for how much you're going to work on your business. See, if we decide, and this is true with cleaning your house or spending time with your kids or with anything in life, if you don't set a goal, or in other words, if you don't define what success looks like, then it always feels like a moving target. But if we don't define success, like here's the amount of time that is my goal to work on my business, or here's the amount of time I'd like to spend with my kids in a week, ideally, or here's the amount of time that I would like to work on XYZ, then it never feels like it's enough. So just make up a number. What is the right amount of number for you to work on your business? The second thing about this is I would just say, what's the best way to say this? It's not that I don't want you to care what other people think. I want you to discern what other people think. I love Ecclesiastes 3 in the Bible. It says, for everything there is a season. There is a time for everything under the sun. There is a time to hustle and a time to slow down. It doesn't say that, but it should, right? There's a time for everything. And I will tell you, if you're a believer, anyone listening right now, if you're a believer, the Holy Spirit in you will do that for you. The Holy Spirit in you will agree in the things that are for you and will put up a wall for the things that are not. Man, Instagram, influencers, teachers, coaches, people like me, that can be so helpful when you need it, but we're not God. Instagram's not God. Even the smartest person you know that influences you in your business is still not God. He's the one that's going to tell you what you need, and you can pray and seek discernment to know what that is in the moment. All right, let's see if we got time for one more before we wrap up here. How can I get my boutique to sell out fast with a few items on social media? Well, that's a pretty big question. I mean, this is a major marketing question. I'll just give you a really quick answer because we don't have time to go into detail here. 1, you need to have really good items and really good at marketing. I learned in advertising when I majored in advertising in college that nothing will kill a bad product faster than good advertising, because you get a lot of eyeballs on it and they experience it and the product is bad. So your items need to be good. They need to be good quality items that people want. They need to have a good price, but then you need really good marketing and advertising to get those eyeballs on it. You need both. 1 will not be enough. You can't just have good items because if no one knows about it, they can't buy them. And you can't just have good advertising because then if the products suck, people are going to spread the word to their friends and they're not going to buy them. So you need both. Really good quality products and really good marketing, and that's how you will get your sales up. All right, y'all, I love hanging out with you. I love answering your questions. Thanks for hanging out with me as always. And for more encouragement on becoming the person you want to be, you can visit ChristyWright.com.
Mercy Me is coming to Pittsburgh, the Together Again tour with Mercy Me, Crowder, and special guest Andrew Rip, Thursday, October 5th. Bring your family and friends to the PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh for Mercy Me, Crowder, and Andrew Rip live in concert. 3 multiple award-winning artists on one stage for one night. Let your spirit soar, your heart sing, and your faith ignite. Mark your calendars for Thursday, October 5th. Get your tickets now at mercyme.org.